Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission Study Session Meeting. It is presently 6 p.m. Monday, August 14th, 2023. I'd first like to begin by thanking the commissioners for their service. And we will, in our study session, start with item A1, discuss regular agenda items. That will take us to item C1, consider approval of the July 24th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission minutes and take appropriate action. Commissioners, any comments, notes, errors?
I did notice one thing in the minutes. If I can put my note page here. On page 4 of the minutes, under C2, consider approval of the request for the final plat. On the 7th paragraph, it says Commissioner Miller asked the applicant whether the townhomes were originally intended to be for rent. Mr. Bolding stated he was not sure, and he inherited this property from the previous owner. My memory serves, I thought he said he inherited the project, not the property. There's kind of a big difference there.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. You're right. I think that should be project.
Yeah, he was the new project manager, not the new
Yes.
property owner.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you for catching that. I had one other amendment just in the naming of our subcommittee. And I just want to make sure I understand correctly, because the subcommittee, although maybe we're just more colloquially calling it landscape ordinance, but there are technically two separate ordinances, the tree preservation ordinance and the landscape ordinance. And I want to make sure that we keep the distinction that there are two separate ordinances and that we've indeed tasked this committee with looking at both of those.
Correct.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so just a small amendment there. Any other notes, edits, errors? All right, thank you all for your diligence in that. That will take us to item D1. We'll conduct a public hearing and consider the request to rezone approximately 0.54 acres located at 2877 LBJ Freeway, described as lots 1 and 2, Block 1, Jack Gay subdivision from Office District O to Local Retail District 2, LR2, and take appropriate action. Thank you, Sarah.
Any questions on this item? This is a rezoning request from one standard district to another. It's a little unique in that we're not looking at a specific site plan or a specific project. They're just wanting to change the zoning at this point.
Who is it submitted
The application.
the applicant? Yeah.
The applicant is Maxwell Fisher with Zone Dev, and he's acting on behalf of the property owner.
On behalf of the property owner. Do we have any background? It's been this
It's
zone, what's it, letter O for
Yeah.
seemingly forever, so what's
literally forever.
transpiring?
It's
Do we have
been
any
zoned-
background on what's transpired lately, or?
Yeah, it's been
Sure.
zoned office district since 1969 when the zoning ordinance was adopted in Farmers Branch. Over time, the properties around it have kind of been rezoned to allow retail uses. This property used to have an office building on it. It was demolished in 2009 and it's been vacant since then. And so I think the owner at this point is just wanting to change the zoning to allow a larger variety of uses on the site before moving forward with development.
So the neighboring properties are zoned the same, the LR2?
Yes, the property to the east is an auto shop tire store, and so that's zoned LR2. Then to the west, it's actually a planned development district, but it defaults to LR2 zoning, so all the same uses are allowed.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but in office, can you do retail use?
Mm-mm.
You can't do any type
Nope.
of retail. So I think that's what they're aiming for, is trying to do some sort of retail.
But we don't know what though, right?
We don't know what.
The applicant will be there tonight, though, to answer questions.
Does anybody, or does everybody remember what's on the corner of that property, the subject property to the east?
Yes, it's that tire repair shop.
Right. And these are my comments. That property is at one of the entries of our city. It has been an eyesore forever. Okay, now, the thing I do not like about this request, if I own that property next to that station, I would change the zoning to the same as that station. Then I would go to the owner and I would say, I will lease you my property because it's the same zoning, so you can park even more cars
Oh,
than you've already parked on my property if you need additional parking.
sure. And that's a great point to bring up. The property on the corner, it is an automotive use right now. That use is not allowed by right in LR2 because it's been there forever. It's grandfathered in, but it wouldn't be allowed to expand onto this property, including for parking.
Well, what if they put up a security fence? Or they came to us and asked for a special use permit?
I believe, I'll have to double check. I don't even think by special use permit they can do auto repair in LR2. I think that's limited to industrial districts. I'll verify that for you though.
Well,
But even so, they would have to come in with a site plan that shows a primary structure with the parking lot. We wouldn't allow just parking there.
well, and again, the point I'm trying to make is, I don't like the idea of somebody coming to us, even if they are next door, asking for a zoning request, and they don't have a plan for a planned or future development. Kind of doesn't make any sense to me. Now, if it did affect his property taxes in some way, shape, or form, which I don't know if it does or not, because I haven't done the research, I might be inclined to consider it. The owners of that corner property years ago came to the city and said, we'd like you to buy our property for something outrageous like $500,000. It was a big number. And of course, we turned them down at the time. But to grant these people, without a reason for a planned project, a change in zoning, I'm gonna vote no for all those reasons.
I'm looking at that use permit chart, and the last two lines has, for LR2, shows that vehicle maintenance, diagnostic, lubes, brakes, state inspection, glass repair, paint, it seems to be allowed in LR2.
Right.
Is that not similar to what the property on the corner is already having?
There is a distinction between repair and maintenance, you're correct. And let me turn to that page.
I just want to make sure, this has nothing to do with that corner lot. I mean, what we're considering today has nothing
Well,
at
it
all
does-
to do with, that they're connected. They're not here, they're not before us presenting, we're talking about the property to the west of it.
Yeah, I
Is
know.
I'm not sure
Different owner.
what,
So,
Yeah.
but what we're doing though, if we allowed this, is we'd be given the opportunity of that corner lot to expand into a larger lot area.
Well, it's not as simple as just.
Because he's
expand.
grandfathered in now.
Right.
If you change it to LR2, the question becomes, can he expand that business that's on the corner into that lot that we're considering by making it LR2? Which I don't know if I like that, none of the vehicles like that, so.
Well, I think we'd have to make the distinction between, obviously, vehicle repair versus vehicle maintenance. Vehicle maintenance, and I'm looking at this right now, LR2, it is allowed by right. It's still a separate lot, and so we have to look at it from that perspective, in the sense that it's its own individual lot. We do have to look at the surrounding uses, so absolutely. Yeah, I think we're all correct in doing that as well. But in this particular case, what they've brought to us is, hey, we want to see about turning this into retail. And so, we look at it from a larger picture also, like, is this consistent with the comprehensive plan? Is this consistent with the surrounding uses? And when I'm looking at the uses, I'm talking about the zoning districts, really. Is it consistent with the surrounding zoning districts? Which it checks off those particular marks. Now, this is a discretionary act, so it doesn't mean that because they check off all the boxes that it has to gain this board's support or even city council support. So absolutely, these are all good questions that
I just-
bringing up.
Because it doesn't seem
Yeah.
like we know what their plans are, other than
Yeah,
like
and-
change it to this, so.
And I think that's where this is very unique. I think we're so used to seeing plan developments come through. With a plan development, we have a site plan, we have elevations, we have landscape plans, we have the details. With this, when you're dealing with straight zone request, it is as detailed as the ordinance that was provided to us, which basically means I'm going from this district to this district. And really, the only thing we can honestly look at is the use table, at least from staff's perspective.
Yeah.
So
But it-
here, and I think that's where, Sarah, just correct me if I'm wrong on this table, you outlined or you highlighted the distinction between some of these colors also. So this is really just showing us, hey, if we keep it at office, these are all the allowed uses.
Right.
If we actually expand to this LR2 or, go to this LR2 option, a lot of these uses do become either by right or they have an ability to ask through an SUP for something.
Right.
SUP still doesn't mean that they have the right to do it. SUP still means they have to go through a process, through a public hearing process
For a specific use.
for a specific
But we don't know
use.
what use they're
Right.
have in mind at the moment. And
And I think that's-
probably
that's
we'll
what
ask
the-
that when we go downstairs, but.
Yeah, I think that's where the applicant probably needs to really kind of expand upon that. Honestly, if they're still doing a straight zone, I'm not sure if he might be able to. I don't want to speak for him. He might be able to kind of narrow down more along the lines of what that owner is looking for. But
Well, who is the owner he's representing?
it's on the application. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Who is it?
His name is Amir. That's his first name.
He owns the
applicant
property.
is Maxwell
Well, but
Fisher.
see, they may be wanting to put some use on that property. He may be negotiating with somebody right now that he has a contract out there that says this contract is subject to a change in zoning.
Well, I mean, again, we're just looking. We're facilitators, so we just facilitate this through the process. So.
But it's also,
You know.
If I could say-
investigators too.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, again, we're looking at it from, they brought us an application, does it meet the comp plan? Does it also meet, the adjacent?
Well, does anybody on staff ask them, hey, what do you have planned for the property?
Yeah, and
So what did they tell you?
they, retail, what other items did they
Yeah,
say? Besides
retail
retail, they have the ability to ask for gasoline stations through SUP, right? They have the ability to, everything that you see on this list, they have the ability to do by right or by SUP or not allowed at all. So when you guys look at this, think of this as though they could sell the property afterwards, They could keep the property. They could move on any of these items. That's how you have to look at straight zoning. And again, we're very used to PDs, and that's how we've done a lot of things in the city. I'm not saying that either one is right or wrong, but we still have to look at it
Well, see
from.
here, and I think of these townhouses that are built
Oh, sure.
down the street, when the guy comes up here, and I looked at the presentation,
Oh, sure.
and he says, yeah, these are gonna be single-family homes. And then we sit there 2 weeks ago, and he says, oh, yeah, we're gonna rent them.
Right?
I have a problem with some of these people coming in here and telling us and/or the council one story,
Right.
and then we find out later it's something else. And we're setting ourselves up for something unless the guy comes and says, here's what I have a plan to do, and I really need your help. Here's the plan, here's who the buyer is, here's who the seller, here's who the tenant's gonna be, or whatever.
I will,
But just to request zoning, I have a problem with that.
But they have a right to do that. They have a right
And
to ask.
I
And we
will
have a
say-
right to ask the questions and reject it too.
Right. just
I will
due
say
process.
that this process of asking for zoning changes is quite common in other municipalities where I've served and participated in. And in fact, in some ways, as opposed to doing planned developments, which can be quite onerous and have a lot of issues in terms of helping have a cohesive zoning plan that meets your comprehensive plan, doing a straight zoning change is kind of in alignment with helping maintain your comprehensive plan. So this is a standard process. I know it feels different to us, as you said, having done a lot of the plan developments, but I want to tell you that this is a very standard.
I agree. It's an entryway to our city, so I want to make
Right.
sure that whatever we do there presents well for entering our community, so.
No, and I
But
think
the-
Right now, we have something that may be borderline not so pretty.
Yeah.
And I don't want to expand that or open ourselves up for.
Can I ask,
And I will also add that we've seen it certainly in the current economy, of course, office space is not a very desirable
Yeah, they're not
use with the work from home. And so in the
Well, there's been
current,
a push lately to get people to come back to the offices, so that
yeah,
might be changing too.
there's still a glut of
We don't know,
open
yeah.
office space. To the extent that I see this kind of also putting on my hat of, having gone to this training, we'll be talking about, one of the things they mentioned in that training was, thinking about the uses and changing those uses as as in the interest, as you said, and the health and safety of everyone, but that that in that way, the property's zoning also determines the economics of the sale value of the property. And so there's not an assumption that the property is automatically upzoned. It was agricultural, but it's going to be whatever it's going to be, those sort of things. We had a lengthy discussion about that in the training. And to my mind, this fits in that thing of this is a zoning request change, which, again, consistent with the surrounding development. And also, it does likely impact the valuation of the property itself in terms of what's desirable in today's market for development. It's highly unlikely we would have an opportunity to develop a new office space in that location, again, in the current thing. Now, that could change in 10, 15, 20, 30 years if we want to maintain that office zoning. But for redevelopment opportunity of that, it seems likely that it would need this retail zoning to
Not
be.
knowing what his plan is, I'm a little unsure.
Sure.
If he wants to put a gas station or something there, I'm not going to be in favor of that. That's not what I want seeing as an entryway.
7-Eleven, Quick Trip, Chevron,
I mean,
Just to play devil's advocate a
makes me
little
feel
bit.
kind of,
It
just makes me uneasy, that's all, not knowing what he wants to do.
I see where you're coming from. Just to play devil's advocate a little bit, I can't think of any property adjacent to a freeway that is not an eyesore because freeways are eyesores. So, I mean,
even the Galleria.
it's close to the freeway. It's not right smack dab
Across
the
the
first the first thing you get to. So, but I was going to ask. I know you just hit on it a little bit, but I was just going to ask from people that are more experienced. I mean, can you give like a percentage wise of how common this type of request is? Straight zoning,
Zone.
as in contrast to planned development.
I mean, since I've been here, I've never seen a straight zone case.
Okay.
Brian, you've been here the longest. How many straight zone cases have you seen in your 6 years?
This is the first one I've seen.
Yeah, so it's incredibly rare, I guess, if we have to say it that way. It's not very common, but our city's made up mostly of planned developments.
Well,
That's what I was going to say. There's very few areas that
Very
are
few.
straight zoned to begin with that you could re-straight zone. The majority of our 12 square miles at this juncture have been designated as planned developments.
So normally when you have something that's straight zoned, all of the rules and regulations are already outlined in our code. The setbacks are outlined. What you can do with fences or what you can do with the building, all of that is outlined, and they have to adhere to everything that's in the code. So it's not like a PD. A PD is very flexible and it's customized. Whereas here, what the code says is what you got to do, and if you deviate from that, your only recourse is really to go to ZBA, right, the Zoning Board of Adjustments. So they would still be required to have to go through a full, and just correct me if I'm wrong, sir, but they would still have to go through a site plan review for anything that's constructed or built. If they have variances or special exceptions, that's where the ZBA comes into play. But other than that, they have to adhere to everything that's in our code as it's written currently for that particular district. Now, again, I think we see a lot of planned developments where there's a little bit of give and play on that. And I think, again, that's really what we're used to. So this is, I don't want to say it's uncharted territory. It's just not that common, So.
Can I ask a question, just because I'm new here? If he were to come back and say, I want to change the zoning because I want to put in a Gucci or something totally upscale, and we say, yeah, cool. And then at the end of the day, he changes his mind and wants to put in a 7-Eleven or a Quick Trip. What recourse, if any, would we have? Because we've already granted the.
Right. So let's
It's
say
only
he
change.
wanted to do like a Gucci, like you said. So it's a clothing store. And in the end, he decides to do a bookstore, right? Something like that would be very easy for him to just, or him or her, or whoever, to change course and say one thing, but then at the end of the day, they're not held to that just because they say
Right.
that they're going to do a clothing store. They could do a bookstore. Now, if they decide to do a gasoline station or something, that's where it's possible that specific use permits could come into play. And that triggers us to have to go back to the P and Z and to city
But if it's
council.
an automatic approval with an
Then-
X here in
then
this
they
thing,
can-
then he can do whatever he wants, even if he
Absolutely.
said he wanted to put in the Gucci.
Absolutely.
Sure, and it's really, to your point about the regulating the use,
Not the user.
not the user.
Right.
Exactly. And also in terms of thinking about what is the secondary impacts of that use? Do we expect more traffic? Do we expect, how would that impact the city? And so that's why some things do have those special use permits, because we already know in our code that they would have differential impacts in the health and safety of the city and the functioning of how things work. But that's what I'm saying about everything being built into the code. So in many ways, the straight zoning, you're usually more adherent to your code than all the planned developments.
A lot of times it's more restrictive.
Yeah.
Definitely more restrictive. Then a PD, again, provides a little bit of flexibility, especially if that landowner or that person is asking to do something that's not in the code. 9 times out of 10, we're saying, okay, if you're going to do this, well, we expect you to add more landscaping, or we expect you to add more architectural detail, or, something to that effect. It's kind of like a give and take. But it's not meant to circumvent the code. PDs are not meant to do that. PDs are meant to provide, again, a more flexible district, I guess, or use for the most part, design also.
But that's an excellent question, yeah.
If it was a service station, for example,
Right.
those apartments right across the street, their doors open right to the outside. There's no barrier, there's no walls. So if you lived in one of those apartments and we allowed a service station to go in right across the street from your front door, would that be better for your life and welfare or less?
I take your point.
That's another potential here we're looking at too, because if we change it to the uses, a service station is one of those uses.
That use requires a specific use
It does
permit,
require
so that's where the P and Z and council process comes in, and you get to bring up concerns.
Right, for
like
specific
the
gas station,
residential.
correct.
Well, and I'm,
Adjacency.
but
For vehicle maintenance, no.
For
Right.
like quality of life in Farmers Branch,
Sure.
all-night service station open right across the street from you, especially in that neighborhood. So again, to just change the use and not really know what's going to go on, the owner not really show up and have he sends a representative, they're bringing us no project, they're bringing us no contract, they're bringing us no lease agreement. I got a problem with that. I mean, we're giving them something for no reason. I mean, give me a reason. I'd love to see a Gucci or a Galleria or whatever else, but show me what you're gonna do.
Or Gucci.
That's all I'm saying.
I know.
I like Gucci.
No, I mean, these are all, these are fair points, and I think, these are good questions for the applicant, absolutely.
And one of the things I think consider about that parcel of land is not in a very good location.
You're absolutely
I
right.
mean, the traffic patterns down there, the
It's not an
value,
office building
the
location.
value of that land, yeah, so that's,
Yeah,
it's gonna be tough for somebody to develop it, I think, and
yeah.
to come up with something.
Well, whatever they
Easier as
put,
retail than as an office building.
Yeah, well, I don't think an office building is going up.
they're
Well,
they're
and they
gonna
would-
affect that neighborhood and those people that live right across the street.
That's true.
I mean,
Did we get any letters of pushback?
We haven't
Not a
received
reason.
any.
Did we send letters to the folks in those apartments over there?
We sent letters to the surrounding property owners within 200 feet.
But not the residents,
No, it would have
just
gone
the
to
property owner of the apartment building.
Correct.
There
Yeah,
is
and
a
that's a
sign.
state law requirement.
Yeah,
There's-
I know, there's a sign.
There are 2 signs posted on the property.
Okay.
And the applicant has a separate presentation to give tonight, so he may be able to provide more information. The property owner, I believe, will be there as well. He's been involved throughout the whole process as well.
Just totally out of curiosity, what's the difference between the applicant and the property owner? Wouldn't they be one and the same?
It depends. Sometimes the property owner will hire a consultant or an engineer or someone to act on their behalf to to submit documents and correspond with the city.
Okay.
They provided the legal documentation to do that. So normally, again, yeah, we would want the property owner to submit the application for an SUP or for a zoning case, but they can submit like it's basically a letter of authorization, authorizing the consultant to act on the owner's behalf. Only because sometimes the consultants might understand this a little bit more, or the engineer is a little bit more involved. So that's very common, very common.
If this wasn't approved, would they have the opportunity to resubmit and request approval at a later date?
If this is denied, I don't think that they can resubmit the exact same request, but they could maybe come back with a plan development request that showed a specific development and tied them to a site plan where they could request a different zoning district.
Right.
Can they, I should know, but I don't, can they go straight to council if we don't approve it?
They do go to council. If this board was to recommend denial, it still goes to the city council, but it goes with a recommendation of denial from this board to city council. And then city council makes the ultimate decision on it.
Is that probably what they're gonna do in your estimation?
That's a good
would have to,
question. I mean, they don't have, I mean, they could actually withdraw the case if they decide, that they want to see the support from this board also
Well, see,
going forward.
that tells me another thing. If they felt strongly enough about it, that they would go to city council to get this done for no apparent reason. I'm just wondering about their transparency.
Oh, yeah, and I'm not
It's just
saying
the
that they're,
process.
yeah, and I'm not sure if they would or not. I'm just saying that that's an option, that they always have that option. But more than likely, I would assume that even if you get a denial at the planning and zoning level, which is just, it's a recommendation, absolutely, they can continue forward to city council, but with a recommendation of denial.
And that's very common.
Very common.
That's
Very
the
common.
general practice.
Absolutely.
I don't think it means anything nefarious. It's just we issue a report, and then our report goes to city council, and then they make the decision. So it's that's just the process.
Right.
Well, but see, what I don't understand is why the staff would recommend we do this, because we've asked all these questions here in the last 20 minutes.
Well, I
I
think.
mean, to me, you're acting like it's no big deal, and to me, it's a big deal.
Well, and so from staff's perspective, again, we're the facilitators is what we are. And again, we have a professional opinion about it, but our professional opinion falls back on the comprehensive plan. And it also looks at the thoroughfare plan. It looks at the land use plan. It looks at the surrounding properties, how they're zoned. And so that's how we have to base our decision, especially when we're talking about straight zoning. Now, plan developments, there's so much, there may be so many different things that are not a part of our zoning code that's where we can probably get into more of a specific opinion almost of like, okay, do we really feel that this is good for the community or not good for the community? But in this particular case, we have no idea ultimately what these guys are going to build. We just know they want to go to LR2, and we know the neighbors next door are LR2. We also know that the comprehensive plan allows for LR2 in this area. So I'm not saying that staff's hands are tied, but our hands are kind of tied in this situation. This is why this board has that. Y'all have more discretion than us. Let me just say it that way. Y'all have, this board and city council has all the discretion. We have to look at it from a point of, are they meeting the intent of the comprehensive plan? Are they meeting the codes? Are they meeting? And if they're checking off all of these boxes, it would be very hard for us to look at this and just say, nope, we just don't like it, from staff's perspective. But again, that's why we have a P&Z board. That's why we have a city council, because you guys have the discretion to look a little deeper at some of these other issues. And if those are major concerns, then there's nothing wrong with it. This is a discretionary act. This is not ministerial, like a plat. A plat is ministerial. A plat, if it meets all state codes, it has to be approved. But in this case, this is zoning. And just like an SUP, it could meet all the requirements and y'all do not have to approve it. It is completely fine. Ideally, we want to see good projects. We want to see sustainable projects. And when I'm saying sustainable, I mean time timeless projects that last, projects that are good for the community. And, again, this is very general. So again, we don't really know what's going in, but it's not to say that it's a bad thing because it's LR2 and LR2 is surrounding this area. So that's where y'all's decisions and y'all's opinions matter, and councils,
There seems to be a consensus that nobody's going to build an office on that lot.
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean,
It seems highly unlikely in the current.
well, there was an office. When was the office? The office was there in 1970.
Yeah,
I
it was
think,
built in the 70s
And then it was
in
demolished.
2009.
in 2000, and then nothing has sat on that property
14 years.
It's
since.
probably two-story. It was
Uh,
office park, because where the
Yeah.
dirt pile is,
Okay.
all of that was one and a half, two-story office, medical, drive-in park,
Right.
no warehouse.
Well, I will say
Yeah.
what at least I've heard anecdotally from folks in the community is you refer to as dirt pile, but that there, other folks have come in other areas and different things that, with the wind, the disturbance of the dirt itself is a nuisance, right? In an empty
It's a
lot.
giant nuisance, but the state owns the property. They can do anything they want.
Right. But what I'm saying is that there could be a benefit to a development of a structure there that is, as opposed to, and with nice landscaping and, all these other things, as opposed to,
And they
those
could
things.
say, hey, we got a deal, potential development, here's what we're thinking, can we change the zoning? That's what I want to see.
Right, well-
I don't want to
It
just.
sounds like
give
you
them
would prefer
willy-nilly
to
for
see more of
nothing.
a PD than any. I think. I mean, because
Yeah.
you would want to see the plans up front.
Absolutely.
Perfect world,
The
yes.
pipeline.
There's nothing wrong with
Nobody's
that.
even mentioned the pipeline on the edge of the property. I don't know how wide that pipeline easement is there.
Understood. Is there a
Yeah.
pipeline?
There are several development constraints there. The property itself is only a half acre in size. I think when 635 was expanded, right-of-way was acquired from that site, so it became even more narrow.
The pipeline runs on the south side of whatever that street is. It's there forever.
Gotcha.
Yellow signs everywhere, all up and down the easement.
Gotcha.
And it's about 36-inch gas pipeline. That's why that property where the dirt pile is undeveloped, because it's on top of
Can't
a
build on it.
30-inch or 36-inch gas line. It's like one of the biggest in North Texas.
Yeah. I mean, that's if it's just. I mean, if it. And again, I haven't seen the survey. The survey shows that the land isn't encumbered with easements all through it, right?
Not all through it, and we have
Yeah.
a copy of the survey. I'll verify that for you.
So would it be the applicant who would then, if this were denied, would they come back and request a PD? Would they?
That's up to them.
I mean, they could though. That
They could.
that
Oh,
could be a
sure.
process. That could be.
Absolutely. They couldn't come back with the same request.
It is, but they could come back and say, okay, you had concerns, coming back with a PD, which
Absolutely.
lays out more of the plans.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This is a complicated site, especially the way it's shaped, and with the pipeline easement on the north side of it. I mean, anyway, you did a great explanation.
Oh,
You
really?
answered my question better than ever. That's great.
Really?
I mean,
Okay.
it's-
All right.
Half an acre is really small.
It's small. Yeah. I mean,
It is.
I guess I just don't see I don't see anybody developing that land for like a use other than a service station, like I don't think it could be developed really if it weren't for particular uses that
Well, could
people
you
might find,
put a
like-
service station, because you need to have gas tanks and they need to be buried,
They
correct?
need to be, well, and they'd have to bury gas tanks under the ground. They'd have to figure out where the
Is there
pipeline easement.
Yeah.
The pipeline is not this big. It might
Yeah.
be, the easement may be 20 feet wide, but I know it's on the south side of the street because I saw the signs.
So there's not a lot of things.
yeah, I mean
but it's a lot of.
I guess
Yeah.
Well,
I guess my point is like given the site itself, we have to be reasonable about what we would expect. I mean, Gucci's not
Well,
developing
not to that
a store,
I mean,
know.
You're
I-
right, it's a hard site to develop. And if, I used the gas station just because I saw it at the bottom of the page. But if you lived in the apartment across the street, would you want to have an all-night gas station across the street from you?
I see what you're saying.
I mean, and that's
It's
an
like-
extreme example, but
Yeah, I guess from the
The
ci-
other extreme is just giving them a zoning because they want it.
I guess from the city's perspective, though, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but undeveloped land is not financially beneficial to the city as much as improved land, right? So, like
Absolutely
developed
right.
land. So,
Well, and we don't, like you said, it's a lot of conjecture about what could be on that site. So what we're really here assessing is this zoning type appropriate in this, in this area for this site? Because we could what if anything. I mean,
Right, and that's why I said earlier,
that's-
I'd like to know what their plans are to do with it.
yeah.
I'd like to know, what are we putting in our city here at our front door?
Sure.
Right.
And right now, it doesn't sound like anything. So until I know what kind of idea or what they're thinking, where they're going, I don't know that I just hand it over because I don't know.
hopefully, at the meeting, we get
Yeah, and,
More
and again,
details,
the
you know?
applicant wants to give a presentation, and Madam Chair, it would be up to you to
Sure.
say absolutely. Which
Yeah.
I believe they have about 7 or 8 slides that they wanted to go through and show.
That'd be great.
So
Yeah.
I think
But I think we're to impasse anything we can learn or discover in our conversation here.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we were. It's fine. Okay, so that will take us back to item A2 to discuss the 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission retreat and bus tour. Take it away, Brian.
All right, what do we got going?
Let's get our calendars out.
All right. It's still kind of warm that date.
You can wear shorts.
It'll be casual, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Chair Rayleigh. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Brian Campbell, Senior Planning Technician here tonight to discuss with you our proposed P&Z bus tour. Given that a majority of the commission was new, I felt it would be best to start this presentation by just quickly going over why we hold these retreats, because I'm sure some of y'all are wondering why we do these. First, I wanted to note that since 2018, we've had one of these every year except for 2021 due to the pandemic. We staff recognize that the various other cities within the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex are achieving some awesome feats when it comes to development. And given the commission's role in facilitating development here within the city, we feel that it's important that we take you to see these things that are being done in these other cities in person, because they act as educational opportunities, both for you all, but us staff as well. And, it's our hope with these retreats that we come away with ideas that we can bring back and, implement those ideas into development goals that we've set for ourselves, whether it's something in the immediate, like enhancing walkability and creating complete streets, or something that may come up in the future, such as adaptive reuse of old industrial properties. So with that, I would like to quickly recap our last retreat, which took place over 2 days. So the first part of the retreat took place in the city of Richardson, where we toured the North Side area, the Lockwood District, downtown, and the City Line area, part of which is illustrated in this graphic here. So then the second part of the retreat, we went to Fort Worth to tour the near South Side development, part of which is illustrated in this graphic. So topical areas that were covered between both of these retreats were mixed-use development, complete streets, public and private interaction, adaptive reuse, reconstruction, and greenfield transit-oriented development. So on this slide, I outlined a few lessons learned from these previous retreats. I'll quickly go over these. Touring the City Line development reinforced the importance of enhancing the station area to help make this and transit overall accessible to our citizens. Both the Richardson and Fort Worth tours included flexibility in parking for various uses. From this, we recognize the importance of continuing to find opportunities for flexible parking, such as we did in the creation of the Entertainment Overlay District, because doing this helps us to achieve our goal of being more developer-friendly. Both tours provided numerous examples of complete streets, which in turn enhances walkability. And so from that, we came away with several ideas with which we could incorporate that here in the city, especially in key areas like the station area. We've talked a lot about providing additional housing options within the city. Touring Richardson exposed us to several mixed-use developments in which both ground story retail and multifamily units on the upper stories were thriving. So this reinforced the importance of, when possible, identifying opportunities to work with developers who could bring those sorts of developments here to the city. Both tours reinforced the importance of strengthening our public and private partnerships, which of course will be key to continuing successful development. Both tours illustrated real-world examples of adaptive reuse. During the Near South Side tour, I was especially heartened to see several historic structures being utilized for various uses. As we continue to become more built out, it's going to become increasingly important to identify those opportunities where we can reuse existing infrastructure creatively and successfully. And finally, the Near South Side tour included a tour of Crawford Street. This was a commercial area designed for families to enjoy picnics and other outdoor activities while also taking in the local art scene. So from that, we felt that we should identify such opportunities here within the city, as these help spark public and private interactions with the urban form, which in turn increases quality of life for our citizens. And so all of that brings us to the tour that we are proposing next month. We're proposing that the tour take place on Thursday, September 28th, 2023. We're inviting Dallas Cawthron, whom we've worked with on several previous development cases, to go with us on this tour. Because with these, we'd like to invite someone to go with us who can speak to us about what we're seeing. And Dallas knows Dallas, no pun intended. And we feel that he'll be an asset to this tour. As we've previously discussed, we'll be touring the Design District and Bishop Arts areas of Dallas to look at examples of industrial redevelopment and entertainment and mixed-use districts. And so on these next two slides, I just slid in some pictures of the Design District and the Bishop Arts area just to provide a quick sneak peek of what we'll be looking at.
Brian, is it safe to say that we had some dates from before, right? That
Yes, sir.
we had planned to do this a while back, months ago, right?
Yes, sir.
So this is the 28th is the day that we're really hoping that we can get this thing, because I know we've been how many months have we been probably talking about?
I would say at least
3
3 or 4 months, maybe.
Yeah, because I want to
5.
say originally was it April when we originally were looking at it?
I believe we
April
were
or-
originally looking at the May or June timeline.
Yeah, and then of course we had changes in staff, something, and then also we had, I think, the conflicts, right? We had some scheduling conflicts with
Yes,
some
we
of us
did.
also as well. So right now the 28th is looking really good for us. So looking really good because it's also right before the fiscal year. So that's even like 2 days before the fiscal year. So,
Yes,
or 3 days
absolutely.
maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I didn't mean to interrupt. Go
No,
ahead.
that's
Continue.
okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to double check on that.
So that was that. Well, that concludes my presentation. If y'all have any questions, I'm here. Otherwise, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Brian.
Would
So
it typically be in the morning, or is it an all-day, like, how long is it?
Yes, sir. It would be an all-day tour. So we would leave the Farmers Branch City Hall around 9 a.m. and be back around 3, maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
And Brian, you looked at some buses, right? You looked at some transportation.
Yes, sir, and actually, I booked the bus last week.
Oh, good.
So we have a
Okay.
bus.
I'm always in the
Supposed to say that, but
That's good.
no,
You can
no,
always
we did-
unbook it.
well,
He
we did-
reserved.
He
He
reserved.
reserved
He
the bus.
reserved it. He reserved.
Reserved.
But no, that's good. No. Well, and this is it's an air conditioned bus, so again,
Who's driving?
Sarah would be driving it. No, we would have a driver also. And then we'd be doing some lunch, probably in Bishop Arts, right?
Yes, sir.
I think so. So we're looking
working
at
on
some
that.
places also as well. But how does everyone's schedule?
I'm good to go.
I'm
We're
good.
good?
I'm good today. Yeah, I'm good as
We're
of
good on the
today.
28th, you think?
I can make it
Okay.
happen.
All right.
Okay.
So we're thinking shorts, t-shirts, hats. It's gonna be
Bottled
hot.
Water, snacks.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we'll have snacks and all of that. So
Absolutely.
We should be.
I love it. That's
Your
awesome.
basic party bus?
Basic party bus.
It's gonna be early fall.
99 free.
I'll take it.
Don't be
If it's under
distant
100, no,
today.
if it's under 100, I'll take it.
We'll
He's making fun of me because I said, oh, it's only 99. It's great.
Yeah, right.
The average
Gotta take what you
we'll
got.
dress for the temperature. You never know in September though, because
Okay.
you recall that Richardson tour, you weren't on it, but that Richardson tour was freezing.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
The wind killed us,
It
Yeah.
was.
right? The wind just blew us. away.
So
Yeah.
we will just dress appropriately for the weather and comfort and walking.
Walking,
Be prepared to walk.
A lot of
Yes.
walking, guys. A lot
So
of
that's
walking.
an
I had one question on this. Are we considering the same topic areas as we used during the last visit to Richardson and Fort Worth? You had them listed here. Mixed use development, complete streets, public-private interaction, adaptive reuse.
There probably will be some overlap between what we cover in this tour versus the last one, but we're hoping that we'll come away with some different ideas from this one versus the
Okay,
last one.
I just didn't know if I wanted to try to focus on all of
there-
these or just a couple that were,
I mean, I
As
would
we
say
visit.
focus on all of them, because I
Okay.
mean, there's always gonna be overlap.
Okay.
And I would say the biggest differentiation is that, I think, as we discussed before, understanding that our east side area will be getting potential for redevelopment. That's really kind of the focal point of what
I just
these
didn't know by this, on this trip,
Yeah,
do they have a lot of complete streets done?
yeah.
So that I could spend some time looking, or not?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if not, then maybe I should look at the mixed-use development aspects a little. That's all I was asking. That's what.
There are sections of the design district that are not quite redeveloped yet. Are we meeting with any individual businesses or small businesses or representatives of the area besides the one we're partnering with?
Nothing that's planned at the moment, but.
But that's something that
It
I
could be
know.
something if those opportunities
Right.
were to arise,
And
absolutely.
we haven't met with Dallas, we haven't had a meeting with Dallas. I mean, we've talked to Dallas already. Dallas has said, absolutely, he's ready to do this. So now that we know that the 28th is good, we're going to set up a meeting with Dallas and then kind of go through some of these specifics. And if you guys would like, do we have another P and Z meeting that we do before?
We do.
We
I
could
think we have
probably do an
two.
update on this also to give everybody a bit more, some
Context.
more details about what we're planning to do and who we might be able to meet with as well. I know a lot of you guys are new, so I want to say that the previous P and Z really got to dive into, hey, where do we want to go and where do we want to focus? So we're just kind of throwing this on some of you guys, but some of you guys were here already
Yeah.
before.
Well,
when
and
we had the
to his
discussions.
question, I think the person who gave us a tour, particularly in Fort Worth, had worked with a lot of these property owners on their zoning and stuff. So he was able to introduce them to the individual owner, and we talked to them and asked questions. So
And Dallas
if it
has
goes like
done-
that, they'll probably have a similar opportunity to have a
Absolutely.
conversation with the.
Sure.
That would be good. It'd be beneficial. Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Brian. I think we're all looking forward to it.
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Absolutely.
All right, up next, A3, we would love to receive an update from the Planning and Zoning Commission, Landscaping, and also Tree Preservation Ordinance Subcommittee.
Well, this will be quick. We have combined everybody's schedule, and we have a meeting set for this Wednesday. So that is the biggest update I can give you. We have wrangled
Good start.
schedules. We have people on board that are masters, and that is not me. But
You got one more person, right?
Yeah, so
did.
you
We
got
got
recruited
another
people now?
Texas master naturalist.
Right.
how many people? Just 2 of you, 3 of you?
There'll be
4?
3 of us,
Okay.
along with Kara.
Good
So
job.
that's where we stand.
Yeah, good.
And I'll let you know how the meeting goes on our next meeting. I'll give you an update for them.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, up next, item A4, discuss the APA Texas Midwest Section 2023 Elected and Appointed Officials Workshop. So there were 3 of us who attended, so I'd love to hear the reflections that y'all brought away from that and to share them with everyone so we can all benefit really from that training.
Well, to me, it was just really humbling because I learned how much I don't know. That, you know, I'm new here and I appreciate everybody's indulgence on my naivete. But I thought it was a really good class, a great overview, and a lot of key things that will likely stick with me for at least another month or so.
I'd agree. It was, for like a hot second, it was kind of overwhelming at first because it was like, oh, wow, I know nothing. But the instructors that were leading all these different sessions were very informative, were actually a little bit, I'd say, slightly entertaining because it was, they kept it going. And what I thought would be a day that would be kind of slow actually went by really quickly.
Wow.
I was like, oh, hey, it's over.
It was really good.
So, lot of information to unpack. And you said something that actually, I took some notes. That was, hold on. Consider the use, not the user, was an important fact. The needs of many outweigh the need of one, which I thought was an interesting way of looking at stuff. And then my last little nugget, because I know you have a deeper dive, was that if it's not in the comprehensive plan, board should deny a request. That was something that came from the attorney. When you're looking at stuff, you should, if it's not in the comprehensive plan, you should really
Change the
think
plan.
about.
Yeah, change the plan first. Yeah, that's right.
She did not say change the plan. But
Somebody did there.
somebody did. But if we got a chance to take the class again, I would definitely do it. It was easily worth the $38 or whatever it was.
The lunch was
So-
great.
What was it? Just out of curiosity.
Oh. you wanna-
It was the Texas APA, American Planning Association's elected and appointed officials workshop. They have historically held these in conjunction with the Texas APA conference. Occasionally they do them standalone like this, and they do them in different areas because Texas is a big state. But I've actually been to one previously. At a Texas APA conference, and then this one again, and I still came away learning new stuff even this time, or little details, or especially the case studies, the use cases as
really good.
examples. Even though I'm getting a PhD in this, so I would highly encourage those of you who are interested in these topics to take advantage as our local chapter of the Texas APA holds these opportunities in the future.
Any videos available?
That's actually what I was about to ask. Is it recorded?
I don't believe they recorded it. In the past, there were some recordings when we went virtual for Texas APA. They did have some recorded materials. There are a lot of this information is available on the Texas APA website, or there's a couple of other resources that have very similar.
They just sent out
things.
the packets.
Yes.
With all the presentations, which
Oh, they
we
did.
share.
Yes, so they did send out their present, but of course it doesn't come with the full piece, but
PowerPoint decks.
yes, the decks. But I did pull together a couple notes, if you'll indulge me. I'm not gonna go into full professor mode, but if you've been doing this as long as me, then, when you wanna talk about something, you just make a PowerPoint, right? So,
Man.
what I wanted to bring up, and y'all hit the best high points. A couple of other highlights and key takeaways. So this actually comes from me more than from them, but they said use Texas APA as a resource, and they have a website. You can become a member, all that sort of thing. I added to that because I'm a member, I think, of almost all of these organizations and then some. But this is what I do, right? So I'm not expecting everyone to do that, but I'm just giving you options, right? So the American Planning Association, also AICP, American Institute of Certified Planners, not that you need to become a certified planner. In fact, you might not be eligible for that, but that there are resources there and guides and information that you could study. ACSP, the Association of Collegiate Schools and Planning, I'll actually be going to their conference in October and presenting there. And the Planning Accreditation Board, I do a lot of work with them. That's all the standards of what is planning and what are we teaching in planning. And so I do a lot of work on that side. AARP. Now, AARP, I'll have you know, no longer stands for the American Association of Retired Persons. They officially changed their name to just be AARP. So that's formally. Now serves individuals 50 plus, and I'm getting darn close to that. So AARP has a lot of excellent research. They have a whole research team that does a lot of planning work, as a matter of fact. And that's a big constituent of our community to consider in planning. We like to talk about in planning from 8 to 80. Right? So that's kind of the idea. Congress of New Urbanism came up in our training several times. We've also previously at the city had individuals from the Congress of New Urbanism come and speak here at a joint session of Planning and Zoning and City Council and provided a lot of information. National League of Cities, another organization that can be very helpful. Transportation Research Board, I presented there in Toronto. Smart Growth America is another good one, and especially for a lot of the issues we're discussing. They have good explainers and videos and graphics that kind of help break things down. And Trust for Public Land also has a presence and is another one. I'm also a member of the Urban Land Institute, ULI, which is a lot more with the economic development and a lot of the commercial aspects as well. And they have an excellent simulation where you can do how would you plan things. Women in Transportation Seminar, another one, and it's not just for women, so don't, anyone can join. And then thinking about and they talked a bit about this, the metropolitan planning organizations. You hear say COG or NCT, COG, North Central Texas Council of Governments, which is federally mandated and serves our 16-county region. A couple of other local regional things, CTED, that's the Center for Transportation Equity Decision in Dollars at UTA. There's also the Greater Dallas Planning Council. They have meetings almost monthly, really informative, good stuff happening. They have field trips, you can go see things, lots of stuff happening there. Institute of Urban Studies, I used to work there. And then TREC, Transportation Research and Education Center, that also UT is part of. There's a ton of other ones. I put on here CPAL, Better Block, Housing Forward, Texas Trees, et cetera. So there are lots of organizations that are working directly or adjacency and all things. So the first piece of this is just use your resources, Texas APA is an excellent one. So a little bit of planning and fundamentals. All of what we do comes from Chapter 213 of the Texas Local Government Code. Why are we here? We've brought this up. It's quality of life, basically. Public health, safety, and welfare, and sound development for our city. And I thank you all for being here and serving in that capacity. And then what do we do? Well, for our ordinance and things, we review it and we report to our report from the Planning Commission here goes to a public hearing, and we have a public hearing often with us. And then there's another chance for a public hearing often with City Council. And that's important because zoning, as we were informed, is an exercise of the police power. And so it allows cities to regulate rights of individuals for the good of the community. And so just like you said, the needs of the one or the few don't outweigh the needs of the many, and how we consider, and it's really a community benefit and interest. But if we're going to exert the power of our city to regulate that, then we need to make sure that we're following the appropriate protocol. And so we went into a lot of that. Here's a nice graphic. Again, comprehensive plan, which is in conjunction with our strategic plan and our city goals. And I'm so glad we have a comprehensive plan now, because before we had the little regional, and then, to your point about not doing things that's not in the comprehensive plan, our whole west side used to be totally different than what was even built on the ground. It was different in the plan because reality happens, and that developed in a very different way than we might have originally anticipated. So I would put a little asterisk on, if it's not in the comprehensive plan, say if it's not the comprehensive plan or the agreed upon understanding of the adaptation of the plan for the reality on the ground. So just typical planning process. And this is really, we've done with the comprehensive plan, especially created this vision for the future. And then every time we meet and we discuss these things, we're really thinking about that vision and looking to make sure that our goals and objectives are meeting that and how we're implementing zoning. So all the discussions we're having and that sort of thing is, I think, directly to that end. And then monitor the results. How's it working? How's our, how do we need to change things? So that's how things like the landscape ordinance and our tree preservation ordinance came out, because we're monitoring, saying this doesn't seem to really still be serving the needs of the city as a whole. Let's reconsider this ordinance, right? And so then we go, analyze the conditions and go right around the circle again. So, so we have a comprehensive plan, it's adopted, now what? So what do we do now? And so we'll be doing a lot of this work with staff's help. Again, thank you to our wonderful staff who will help ensure that all the things that we do conform with the state laws. That we make sure we change the plan before we change the zoning, right? We know that this is within the appropriate plan. All the review checklists that you go through. I think, especially in the last session of the training, they really made it clear how intensive the review process is to go through all of this information. So we really appreciate that, at least I do. And then how that impacts our capital needs and our budget. Like you said, we're coming up soon on a new budget cycle. We just missed this past one, right? So we'll have to wait till the next budget cycle to really consider how this comprehensive plan will be enacted within our budgetary decisions of how we're serving the city. And economic development, leveraging that plan for our communication and consensus building, especially now that it's adopted. We've all agreed this is the vision for the city, so we can build consensus around that. And then zoning and development code changes, just like we were discussing tonight. So I won't go through all of these, but I think this is the piece that Heidi brought up. We can regulate a lot of things, the height of buildings, size of yards, open space. What we don't dictate and regulate is the user. We're focused on the use. So it's very important that the zoning actions that we do are not discriminatory in nature. So, again, that's the official code. A couple of things that came up with the amendments to the Constitution. So this was excellent discussion. Sorry you missed it. I won't do it justice. But if we are doing our due diligence of following our 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, then we will be sure that we are giving equal protection under the law. And so that's, again, where this equal protection, treating people similarly, and considering that how you zone could deprive folks of a property right. And so that entitles folks to a hearing and a notice of that hearing. Fifth Amendment, this is just compensation for taking. Typically, taking by municipalities come in two flavors. Either the actual physical taking of the property or invasion of the private property. We need an easement here, or we need to do something physical here, and that happens. But often it's a diminution of those development rights. So we say we have a regulatory constraint on what you can do. You don't have, you can't, build a ladder to the moon, right? We have a rule about what's appropriate in this area from the regulatory standpoint. First Amendment also comes up. When we think of First Amendment, you think of freedom of speech, freedom of religion. And so those come up frequently in property rights as well. And so we had a lot of really good examples of these, I think, as well. And then just thinking about zoning in terms of ordinances, as we've discussed, also districts, both the base district and the overlays, which we were also, Brian was just reminding us of in our entertainment district. Plan development, these PDs that have come up today, the use standards, what's permitted by the right, special use permits, prohibited uses. Again, These are exactly the things that we're dealing with. These are all the things we had some discussion around. And then the development standards, parking, landscaping, screening, design standards, open space, form-based codes, throwing a lot of names at you, but there's, a lot of considerations. And then as we make these zoning decisions, this is, the training we received on how do you make a zoning decision? What do you do? Well, you start with the comprehensive plan and all your other plan documents, the thoroughfare plan, the trails master use plan, the Interstate Highway 35 corridor study. You take all of the city's existing plans, and then you also think about the next piece of that is the context, the secondary effects. Is this a reasonable use? What is the surrounding zoning and land uses? How might this impact quality of life? Is this zoning or ordinance appropriate? What are the adjacencies? And so these are exactly the discussions we were just having. So, probably you don't need me to tell you, right? But it doesn't hurt to be reminded that we're following, this training. Plats, platting ministerial function. So that's an important note. And that the approval of plats in many municipalities is delegated to city staff. Oops, sorry. It's doesn't even come to the P&Z because of this fact. And especially with the new updates from the Texas legislature. So it must be either approved with conditions, or disapproved within 30 days after the filing. That's the quote shot clock that's been put into effect. And that the plat is approved when the conditions are met. And if the city were to take no action, that the plat would be automatically approved. So Euclidean or standard zoning versus form-based zoning. So we had lengthy, nice discussion breaking down all of these things. And our city has kind of a mixture of both. We have some areas like our station area, which has more of the form-based code, and we've put those into effect. And then we have other areas that follow a more Euclidean pattern. And then just kind of what is the difference between the two? So on the left is all the Euclidean. This is like the segregated land use. Like over here, people sleep. Over here, people go to restaurants and eat. Never the two shall mix. That's like the traditional old school, like Euclidean zoning. It was really meant to isolate and segregate land uses that were then uniform within that area, with an emphasis on the individual uses of property and lot size, building placement. It's what you think of as a standard like suburban development pattern. And there was little focus on right-of-way, or it was just the focus on the site, like the building site in the area, not the focus on the street. And that led to a lot of roads that were then trying to be streets, and we call these stroads. So this tends to increase the vehicle miles traveled, because for you to get from your front door to any use of any retail or anything else, you have to travel some distance out of that zone, right? Because you've been zoned just into residential. So you have to leave that zone to another district to do your acts of daily life. On the form-based side, it's really actually, in some ways, although we don't call it standard, it's kind of like how cities developed without zoning in most cases. So if you don't force this Euclidean zoning, most of the time, if you think about Europe or other areas, or even Rome and how it developed, right, then you're going to get a mix of uses. You're going to have a store adjacent to where people live for proximity. And a real focus on neighborhoods and streets, and transforming and adapting buildings for later use. So it doesn't matter if it used to be a warehouse, it can now be apartments and lofts, right? So thinking about being able to transform. Real attention to build two lines. So not forcing a setback, not saying you have to be way back there, but building to that streetscape to create an interaction between the site and the street. And this emphasis on relationships and use and surroundings. So a real focus on how will these things work together in the site. Diversity in the neighborhoods, focus on building site form, and research has shown this leads to a reduction in vehicle miles traveled, increase in physical activity and social connection, because you're moving on the street and going to and from the things you need to do for your acts of daily life. And then I'll close with the top 10 development review. And so we actually went through each one of these 10. I won't bore you, but that it was really nice way to really break down and look at all of the nitty gritty details. So lots of excellent information, and thanks for listening to me share my excitement about that training, because I found it very informative and wanted to share it with you so you could benefit as well.
So 10 hours crammed into 15 minutes. Nice job.
Thank you.
5 hours. Thank you, Amber.
It was, yes, 5 hours.
It was just 5 hours, but still, I tried to keep it light and brief as best I could.
You went fast. It seemed
Distribute
like
their
10
decks that y'all are getting. Can you share those with the rest
I
of us?
didn't get them. Did you get them?
They did send them via email. I can
I
inquire to
haven't
make
opened
sure
it
that
yet,
we're
but-
allowed to share them, but I would suspect that they would say yes.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I never got it. Will you send it to me at least?
Yeah. And I'll just send a note and ask them if they can share. All right, so that brings us to item A5, discuss, or unless there's other comments or questions from that, I know we're running on time. A5, discuss agenda items for future Planning and Zoning Commission consideration. I think we've already heard that you'll be giving us an update next time, so, thank you, staff, for this suggestion on giving us some additional context around our tour. I think that will be helpful.
I was just going to suggest that we, in light of our title P and Z, we offer the T&L subcommittee, tree and landscape.
Oh, there you go.
It's a shorter version than saying tree, landscape, la, la, la.
Very true.
Got you,
Maybe
got you.
T&L or something?
Okay. Although again, I want to
Some
continue
folks might
to.
confuse that with time and labor, but
No, that, I
That'd be
appreciate
easier.
that. Yes.
Yeah, I'm all over it.
Okay. Yeah.
I did have one thing I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if this is really considered a future item or an item I know that's been discussed before. Some time ago, I remember a previous commissioner, Giovanni Zavala, discussing, or talking about the urgency consideration for the construction of the I-35 overpass, construction to help minimize flat concrete areas, to help.
Are you talking about the betterments? It's I-35 in Valley
Yeah,
View?
because he had said that we need to be in touch with this construction company to adjust how they were going to make some construction alternatives there.
Absolutely.
Is it something we need to talk about more? Has it already been done? Where is all that?
Yeah, no, it's funny that you just brought that up because, just this morning, I actually got a design detail showing what they're planning to do in that particular area that's coming from TxDOT. So,
Because I remember there were some adjustments that
Right.
Commissioner Zavala had suggested, which seemed to be very positive in my view.
right.
And he had suggested that you or somebody in the city reach out to that company person, I don't know who it is.
Yeah, I think it was
For those
it was
adjustments.
with TxDOT, and so I believe our public works director he has reached out to TxDOT to let them know of like these particular concerns that we have.
Did that include
regarding-
the items that
Mhm.
Commissioner Zavala had mentioned? Okay, just to
Correct.
make sure we don't
The,
lose that.
the
one.
only
It
thing
seemed
about
very-
that is that because this had all gone through city council, obviously. City council is the one that approved the
Yeah.
funding for all
Right,
of
right,
that.
right.
So if we're going to have changes related to the design of what council has already approved, something like that would definitely have to go back to our city
Well, as I
council.
recall, Commissioner Zavala had said there'd be no cost changes or anything in that nature.
Yeah.
As
and-
long
and-
as we contacted them at a certain point in time.
Right.
I don't
The only
remember
thing
what
is
the
is that-
deadline was on that, but it
Right.
didn't seem
City,
like it
city
was
council
much
would
of-
still need to be aware of any changes, even if it's not, even if the cost is lower or if the cost is higher, if the cost is the same, our city council really would have to be.
And
the
I,
one-
saw- I apologize, I don't remember
Oh, that's okay.
exactly what the changes were.
But
I
it was
just
important
remember
because
his-
the reason for the changes was to reduce the likelihood of the homeless
Flat
people
space.
living under the bridges.
I believe it was riprap.
And you can change how it's designed, and so you don't give the opportunity and the places for that.
Right.
And
And
so
I
it would
remember
be-
Commissioner saying if we get in touch with them now, there's no real changes that they would
Yeah,
have
so
to be
it would
done.
be nice
So
to hear back from that, because that did seem like a very
it seemed like a great idea, and I just
important.
was hoping we could make
No,
that
no,
happen.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think
Minimal,
Sure,
changes
and we could bring an
costs or
update, we
whatever.
could bring an update back to this.
Again, I don't
to
know
the
if that's a
commission.
future item or not, but
Yeah, that's not a problem at all.
I don't know what you
Um,
call it, to be honest with you. So
I think ultimately it's going to end up,
Betterments, we
it's
would
going to
call
be
it.
a
it's
betterments.
construction or something? Okay.
There's going to have to be some sort of formal process that I can tell you right now. Absolutely, there would have to be some sort of formal process that, because City Council is the one that approved a certain dollar amount.
'Cause I
to be
remember
associated.
Commissioner Zavala sending an email, hey, we need to get on this right away because they're at this point in time,
Yeah, they
something. I have to
they
go back
have
and find the email, but.
right. From what I've seen a general design of what they're proposing underneath the underpass, and it meets all of the details that was proposed to City Council through this Betterments initiative. But if we're going to make any changes, so for instance, if you're going to go from an area that was concrete to something else, to another design standard.
I wasn't suggesting change, I was just trying to follow up on what Commissioner Zavala had mentioned. That, I don't know do you remember more details
So
beyond
I
that?
think it was
I think it was-
similar to what is like at Midway Road, under Midway Road by Sam's Club, the way it's designed there. It's just a style of design that
style of
doesn't
design.
allow for encampments and things
Yeah.
to pop up. And it was,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we can definitely bring an update back with the landscape update and then with the a tour update also as well. Yeah, that's not a problem at all. Absolutely.
It'd be great, thanks.
Absolutely. Sure.
Thank you
That's it.
for
That's all
keeping
I
that on our radar. Appreciate it. All right.
just
well-
one question. I mean, we were receiving on a regular basis a kind of a scorecard. Went to City Council, and this is how we recommended, and this is what City Council did. It's just sort of I don't remember how often that came out. I don't recall seeing that recently, so that we can see back and know,
We have that?
so that we know how the City Council acted compared to what we recommended. It was just a spreadsheet.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
I don't
we were
know
doing
if I've
that
ever
for-
seen that. Was that something you were keeping up with before?
I think we were doing it quarterly. We've only done one since I've been here, but we could
Oh, okay.
get one ready for you. next
Absolutely.
time this meeting.
Yeah, quarterly.
Quarterly is fine.
Still?
Yeah, I think
Quarterly?
was a good cadence for
Yeah,
that.
that's no problem. And it would just show how y'all voted
Yeah,
versus.
what we did, what we
Yeah,
recommended, and what they did, what the council did, basically.
Absolutely. No, I think that's good. That's a good idea.
Interesting.
I will just ask in light of our training, and I know we'll have our ethics training coming up and all of those pieces, but especially with our comprehensive plan being now adopted, I know we're all very excited about that, and we have lots going on. But I know generally with the new budget cycle, there's a work plan that y'all put out, and I just want to make sure that's still on the radar to get the work plan for next year. So I know it's not coming up just yet. It'll be kind of after we get back from that that retreat or our field trip, but just making sure that's on the agenda, kind of the work plan for next year.
No problem.
Just so we've got that in the works, because I know that's going to take quite a bit to pull that together. So rather than tell you later, tell you
No
sooner.
problem. Absolutely. And so I'm glad you brought up about training because the next P and Z we have, that's where we should be starting at 5:30, just so everyone's remembers that. And Kevin Laughlin, our attorney, will be here to do, I believe, probably about an hour session with us. We'll still have time to talk about the cases beforehand, but we'll probably dedicate maybe about 30 minutes to those cases. Other than that, we'll go through the training with Kevin. Any questions you guys have, put them together. You know, having the attorney here, he'll be able to answer a lot of questions for us. Absolutely.
Do you have anything in your hopper that may be coming up the next meeting or two that maybe you could just tell us about, warn us about, think about, or should we even be concerned?
No, I don't think you should be concerned. I don't know. Yeah,
Well, I
I hope
mean-
not. No, I mean, we do have we probably have about, gosh, how many zoning cases do we have?
We had 3 tentatively scheduled.
3 tentative zoning cases, and then we've got a few plats that are in the works also. Mainly the zoning cases, I don't know if we have any SUPs. I don't think we do,
For the next meeting or just in general?
just in general.
Oh, yeah, we have a couple SUPs.
Okay, so there's a couple of SUPs, there's a few site plans, and there's a few zoning cases. So we definitely have
Busy.
lots of stuff to bring to you guys. It's just on our side, before we place somebody on the docket, we want to be sure that comments are addressed. And so that's usually, sometimes these things move fast, sometimes they move a little slower. And that's only because, again, it's a process. So, but we definitely have some items coming down the chain.
You made me think of one thing I always thought was important. SUPs, whether they go with the property or go with the agreement for the term that tenant is in that property.
They go with the property.
I think that would be, well, because we had some that we made go as long as that person was in that facility. So it did not stay with the property.
Are you saying it traveled with the person? Or?
No, it did not stay with the property forever.
Oh, well, and it all depends on
It
how
was
it's
the
written.
term of the lease or whatever that agreement was.
Yeah, with an SUP, normally it stays with the property, but
Normally,
normally. Now,
But-
I have seen it how it's written in ordinances.
that's what I'm saying. When we get to that point, let's make sure we talk about.
Absolutely, and I think that's a good topic to bring up when we talk to Kevin the next time too. We could get some specifics from our attorney on that as well. But that's absolute. I've seen that. Absolutely, you're correct.
Great, well, thank you all once again. I think with that, we'll conclude our study session. It is presently 7:20, and we will meet downstairs and pick right back up
All right.
as soon as we're able. Welcome to the City of Farmers Branch Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It is Monday, August 14th, 2023. It is presently 7:27. We will begin today with citizen comments. This agenda item provides an opportunity for citizens to address the Planning and Zoning Commission on any matter that is not posted on the agenda. Anyone wishing to address the commission should complete a citizen's comments registration form and submit it to the chair prior to the start of the meeting. There is a 3-minute time limit for each citizen to speak, with a reasonable limitation on speakers on any one topic or item, with a maximum of 15 minutes total on the same topic item. Anyone wishing to speak shall be courteous and cordial. The Planning and Zoning Commission is not permitted to take action on any subject raised by a speaker during citizen comments. However, the Planning and Zoning Commission may have the item placed on a future agenda for action, refer the item to the Director of Planning for further study or action, briefly state existing city policy, or provide a brief statement of factual information in response to the inquiry. Today we've received no citizen comment forms, therefore we will proceed to regular agenda item C1, consider approval of the July 24th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission minutes and take appropriate action. Commissioners?
I think during our study session, we identified a couple of changes. So with those changes in mind, I move to approve the minutes with the suggested changes that we identified during the study session.
Thank you. Vice Chair Neal?
Second with the corrections.
Thank you. And any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor? All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next up, item D1 in the public hearing. We will open a public hearing and consider the request to rezone approximately 0.54 acres located at 2877 LBJ Freeway, described as lots 1 and 2, Block 1, Jack Gay subdivision, from Office District O to Local Retail District 2, LR2, and take appropriate action. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Sarah Bergman, lead planner. This item is a rezoning request for a little over half an acre of property located at 2877 LBJ Freeway. The site is currently zoned Office District O, and the applicant is requesting to rezone to Local Retail District 2 or LR2. The site is highlighted on the map here. It's just north of LBJ and west of Josie Lane, and it is currently vacant. A little bit of zoning history for this site. The office zoning has actually been in place since the adoption of the original comprehensive zoning ordinance in 1969. On the image here on the left, you can see this pink area was the original area zoned office district. And then over time, I'm sorry about that. Over time, surrounding properties have been rezoned for retail use. So this property on the east was always zoned LR2, but then property to the west was rezoned to LR2, and this one was rezoned to LR1. This is just a quick comparison of Office District versus Local Retail District 2. The primary difference between the two districts are going to be the allowed land uses. So Office District really just includes office uses, professional, medical, dental offices, etc. And then Local Retail District 2 allows for higher intensity uses such as retail, personal services, restaurants, and health studios. Sorry about that. The LR2 district also opens up an option to request a specific use permit for certain uses that are listed here, and that option does require city council approval. I'm sorry, real quick. The development standards are similar between the two districts. The only difference is, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, I can't, I have a migraine, I can't see the screen.
Oh, is it not showing up?
Yeah, would you mind? I'm so sorry about
That's
that.
okay. No need to apologize. Take a break and take care of yourself. It's okay.
So, as Sarah was just saying, yeah, the office district intended to accommodate professional office uses that do not engage in significant on-site retail activity. Local retail district number 2, this is intended for more of what we consider higher intensity retail and service type uses. We did add some examples here. We were talking about general retail, personal services, restaurants, health studios, and some of these other items, for instance, event centers, brewery, gasoline stations, that would all be required by a specific use permit. So just keep in mind that if this does change from office to LR2, there would be some items that would absolutely still need to come back before this board or to city council for final approval. So, you know, when we look at these types of straight zoning changes, we have to look at our comprehensive plan. And based on our comprehensive plan, which we just approved a couple weeks ago, regional commercial is what is shown within this particular area. Commercial uses that it would include things like shopping centers, offices, retail services. So we can say that the use that is proposed or the change in zoning that's proposed would be consistent with our comprehensive plan. On August 4th, we did send out 7 zoning notification letters. We have not received any written responses at this point. Staff does recommend that the zoning is consistent with our comprehensive plan and the surrounding land uses. So staff is recommending approval at this moment, or at this time. The applicant is here and they do wish to do a short presentation for the board. So Madam Chair, if you're able to allow them to do that, they are ready to and prepared, fully prepared to do that. I can answer any questions that the board may have at this time as well.
All right, great. Do we have any questions for staff firstly before we hear from the applicant?
I'm sorry, Mark, and I think you might have answered this earlier, but in your time here in the city or previously, how many straight zoning changes have there been?
Right. Since I've been here, I've not seen a straight zone change, and I believe we had a little bit of a discussion about that. I think our most tenured person here is Brian, who's been here 6 years, I think. Yeah, and he hasn't seen a straight zone come through as well. So it's not very common. Normally, we see a lot of plan developments come through, but straight zoning, it's a little bit more rare, but it's still, it's absolutely a valid request at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, no other questions for staff? All right, we would love to hear from the applicant if you would. Please state your name and address for the record, and we'd love to see your presentation as well.
Great, thank you.
Chair, Commissioners, Maxwell Fisher with Zone Dev 2502 Grandview Drive, Richardson, Texas 75080, representing Amir Makani on this property. We are excited to bring this request before you. Property's been zoned for office for decades, and the building that was there has been removed for a long time. And because of the size of the property and the fact it has double frontage, it really limits the developable area of this property. So it presents some challenges to build an office building where you can get a return on your investment. And so we're looking to do something here that's more retail in nature, and hence the request. Look at this area, the corridor in general, our sites in blue. There's some large office properties to the west. You know, some of these properties, in fact, I think I worked on one for an SUP to backfill part of the office. I know some of these buildings have, in the past, have had some trouble staying fully occupied. You've probably noticed that there's been sort of a flight to quality in the office market. A lot of times the office users and employees want to have places to go eat and have the other amenities and things like that. So there's some of the older office buildings that have been a challenge. Likewise, in our property, it's a challenging piece. We wouldn't want to build a really small office building because we wouldn't be able to get the rents and keep it full. We think this is a reasonable request. The retail zoning aligns with the LR zoning around us, and so we're asking for something that aligns with what's around us. Planned development districts, Commissioner Neal asked that question, those are usually only warranted when you actually have a need to do a planned development district, when you need the flexibility where a zoning district doesn't work, and so you might be asking for variances or maybe some unique characteristics of the site, maybe multiple uses that would warrant a planned development district. That's not the case here. So a straight zoning district is actually, if your code is designed right and you have zoning districts that are accommodate reasonable development, then you would always want to propose a straight zoning district. And so it's when you have an anomaly is when you propose a PD. Now, some cities do lots of PDs because they need the flexibility, because every development's unique, but it's actually, a lot of cities don't want to do PD, so it's interesting how every city's a little different. Permitted uses, we're very limited on the property today. General professional office, medical office, pharmacy. These are just some of the uses that could potentially go there. We're looking to do something retail in nature. We don't have the exact operator. Could be retail, could be restaurant, could be a combination thereof. If we were to propose a service station, we'd have to come back before you, and you'd have a chance to determine whether it's an appropriate request from a use standpoint, and any conditions and exhibits that would be tied to that development. Here's a couple elevation concepts. We haven't, picked our design yet or a number of tenant spaces, but this kind of gives you the idea or feel. We're not asking, these wouldn't be tied to the request tonight. These are just strictly illustrations. So we think that the request for retail is appropriate with the grade difference. This property is kind of buried. Has very limited. It's actually limited from a visibility standpoint also because it's kind of buried in a hole. And so we think a retail zoning would be accommodate more of a neighborhood retail use. That if you're exiting there already, you can stop in there for some service or retail use. So. The request aligns with the comp plan, and also staff is recommending support, so we would ask you to follow staff recommendation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much. Commissioners, what questions do we have for our applicant?
I have several that I may ramble and ask. I've never had anybody come to me and just ask for a zoning change because they got up one morning and decided to make a change. Now, I will agree with everything you said about an office building site, but have you guys talked to any property owners around the property about potentially making your property larger?
Well, the property to the east and west are both developed with buildings that have functioning, operating uses, and so it's not like an opportunity where we would be assembling several parcels, do something larger overall. That's not.
So you haven't talked to anybody? So you haven't talked to the adjoining property owners?
I haven't personally spoken to the tire shop, no.
Well, my thought even about a retail situation, and again, I agree, it's not an office building site. That's a horrible eyesore on that corner. I can't even imagine somebody investing money in that location with that eyesore on that corner. And I'm just wondering how you would address that tire shop. Those people are grandfathered in. So. Yeah, well, I'm just curious if anybody's thought about that or.
Sure, and a lot of times these things happen organically. When you invest in property and develop property and put a new building there, then sometimes the adjacent properties will also follow suit and invest in property, and maybe the tire shop will maybe they'll find a better site, larger site that maybe they'll expand. But, we don't have control over that property. All we can do is provide landscaping and develop the property, per the city codes on our property. And but that's all we have control over.
Is there any kind of a property tax advantage from going to one zoning to the other? Or do you think the property taxes you think you can get them protested and decreased?
I don't think that's a planning and zoning item.
Well, I know it's
but I'll answer your question anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think it's really part of the purview. But there, taxes are based on ad valorem, so it's based on the property value, and then there's also 2%, 1 or 2% sales tax, retail sales tax. So it's really based on the development. So, the property value, if it goes retail, I would presume at some point it may go up if we develop something there that's a successful business, and then you'd have retail sales tax on top of that. So,
Why can't you get a contract with somebody, market the property and get a contract subject to rezoning? Whether you were going to build a building for sale or for lease?
well, we have some ideas. We have some operators that have shown some interest, but a lot of times you need to go through the rezoning, otherwise it's just speculative, and so they don't want to sign LOIs and move forward with we need to build the building too, so.
Well, can you name some of those operators you're thinking about?
There's a couple, I can't really name them at this time. The request before you is a change of zoning.
I understand what the
Yeah.
request is.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that you would wake up in the morning, so to speak, and say, oh, this property has been holding the earth together out here for 35 years, and now we want to rezone it. And we don't really have a plan, we have some ideas.
We haven't owned the property for 35 years. The property's been zoned that way for that
Right.
long.
I understand.
The property was purchased a couple years ago, and the request before you is something that aligns with your comp plan and is appropriate with the retail, uses and zoning on each side, on a double frontage lot. This isn't adjacent to single family, so we definitely think it's a reasonable request, and we look forward to developing with something that's viable that will provide another retail service and for your city.
Well, again, I've lived here for 35 years, and for example, I know that you have to get a special use permit to build a service station next door.
Mm-hmm.
But the challenge there to me is those people in the apartments right across the street, they open their front door and they've got an all-night service station staring them in the face. So I don't know what you're going to do with the property.
We haven't gotten there yet. We're going to do something retail in nature. Now, if let's say there's some sort of use that requires a specific use permit that would come before you, you can look at putting conditions on the property, such as limiting the hours of operation, so there wouldn't be potentially an overnight business there. So there are things you can do to make a certain use compatible with the adjacencies. And that's why the SUP is required for certain uses. It means it can be compatible with conditions. And you have a chance to evaluate it and approve or deny it at that time when you have all the information available to you.
Is there any harm to you just letting that property sit there like it is?
Yes.
Tell me what that is.
Well, we're paying for dirt and we're paying taxes. So yes.
Well, that's why I asked you the tax question, if there was any advantage or disadvantage for changing the zoning.
Well, I thought you were asking from terms of the taxable value changing, but we're continuing to pay taxes in addition to whatever loan is on the property. So yes, it would be financially harmful if it sit here if we were denied.
Any other questions, commissioners?
Can I ask a question? Have you talked to, can you give us like an idea of the different types of retail that you guys have even talked to? Like, is it?
A restaurant.
Restaurant, okay.
Potentially a gas station with a restaurant or a couple personal service type uses.
Okay, can you give me an example of maybe that restaurant, gas station combo? You don't have to give me the actual name, but I'm just curious, like.
Yeah, I can't give you any operator names, but something that would align with the market, sub-market.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, thank you so much for your time and answering our questions.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, commissioners, this was a public hearing, so first we'll need to close the public hearing. If there's any further discussion or others in the public needing to speak. All right, so any other discussion while we're in open public hearing? Okay. Make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second closing the public hearing.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll move.
Yeah, I was just going to mention I was not proposing a PD in any way, shape, or fashion. I was just trying to find out what the plans are for this property. It's always helpful to know what might be put at the entrance to our city, and I'm very concerned about that. And my answers aren't quite there for me, knowing what might go there. And I understand all the other discussions we've had, but it's just not something I might go for at this time unless commissioners can help convince me otherwise.
All right, we'll resume with thank you for that comment. Currently, we're closing the public hearing.
I'm sorry, I thought I waited for you to close the public
No,
hearing
we
before
were
my
gonna,
comments.
no, we're gonna vote on closing the public hearing, so we just hadn't gotten to the vote yet.
Okay, I'll replay it again if you want.
Okay. All those in favor of closing the public hearing? Thank you, all right. And now we'll entertain a motion on the item at hand.
Yeah, I would like to move that we recommend the approval of ordinance number 3818 as presented.
Thank you for that.
Second.
We have a movement and a second. Now we would like any further discussion on the matter at hand. Good.
Ditto to my
Okay.
earlier comments. I don't think I have much more to add,
Thank you, Roger.
unless somebody else wants to convince me. But
Any other further comment on the agenda item at hand? I will just repeat what I said upstairs, that these straight zoning amendments are, again, as the gentleman stated, pretty typical in a lot of municipalities, including other places that I've participated in. And I realize that it is different than seeing the plan development of all of the plans, but it is the appropriate methodology to go through in terms of seeking that zoning change.
I'm sorry, I think I misunderstood. I thought the city had indicated that this is not a standard.
No,
This
they
is a
said it
rare-
is, just because it's uncommon in our city, but the reason it's uncommon in our city is because the city has pursued a development pattern of issuing planned developments that have subsumed the majority of the available land space. We're only 12 square miles. And so it's been infrequent in our city because of the amount of land that has already been created as a planned development. And some of that is because as we've worked very hard to update and change our code to be a good cohesive code for the city, wherein we needed adaptations to the code or exceptions, we've leaned on those those planned developments as a methodology as opposed to changing the code for the whole city. We've given these small things, but this process of going through this is actually the typical process and is fairly standard and even often preferred over having planned developments have incongruous aspects to the city that then mean that your entire code of your city is less in effect because the planned development overlays and takes over what would otherwise be your standard city code. So what the gentleman is requesting is actually the default standard. Planned developments were kind of a later creation in Euclidean zoning to account for these give and take as you were in cities.
Thank you for that explanation. I just thought that this, according to Marcus, was not typical and not standard heretofore with the history that he's been employed here. So
Yeah,
thanks for
I
the
think
clarification.
the word he used was rare, which is accurate. He was not mistaking, but it's only rare
I
because
thought
of,
he said never while he's been here.
well, he's been here like not even a year.
And I think he referred to Mr. Campbell as well as
Yeah.
also not being typical in standards.
Yeah.
Maybe I just misheard.
Yeah. So just to clarify that this is actually the standard process and plan developments are, yeah. If that just helps you understand the history of the zoning, yeah. And especially in Farmers Branch, I think we're so small in the 12 square miles. So some of this is just by nature of the development pattern that our city has taken. And so much of it is just already zoned residential. And then the remaining bit has been following this other planning trajectory. Any other discussion, questions? All right, we've heard a motion and a second. We'll now hold a vote. All those in favor of recommending approval, we'll take a vote on those in favor. All right, all those opposed? All right, that is if I counted correctly, 4-3, so that will carry. All right, thank you so much for that, very much appreciate it. And with that, we have reached the end and we will adjourn at 7:53 p.m. Thank you very much.